Our oral commentary is on I Explain a Few Things by Pablo Neruda.
The poem was published in 1937 in Neruda's book España en el Corazón, which translates to Spain in Our Hearts. It was written as a response to the Spanish Civil War, which was from 1936 to 1939. During this time, Neruda was a Chilean consul and he had previously spent time at the front. His poetry was heavily influenced by the traumatic experiences of the war. A lot of his poetry, including this poem, portrays his political views against the nationalist movement as he depicts the brutal reality of the violence and the devastation brought upon by the war.
Title. In the title, I Explain a Few Things. I Explain informs the reader that the poem will be explanatory, and a few things alludes to the fact that he will not be talking about one particular thing, but multiple things. The title is an understatement, as Neruda addresses the Spanish Civil War and the destruction it brought upon his home and the beauty of his land. However, by stating things, he makes it appear to be insignificant. The title refers to the fact that Neruda will explain the multiple reasons behind the changes in his poetry.
Our assertion is, in Pablo Neruda's poem I Explain a Few Things, the use of figurative language, repetition, and direct address is used to explain the prevalent socio-political changes in his poetry. His expressive diction develops visual imagery and creates varying tones which parade the nationalists and the devastation they caused during the Spanish Civil War.
You will ask, but where are the lilacs and the metaphysics covered with poppies, and the rain that often struck his words, filling them with toads and birds? I'm going to tell you what's happening to me. The poem is introduced with the narrator addressing three questions he believes his readers may have regarding the prevailing changes in his poetry. The narrator states, "You will ask," directly addressing the readers as you. Through the use of a colon, he indicates that the next three questions are questions the readers will have. The questions start off with saying, "But where are?" indicating that those themes being questions are no longer addressed in his poetry. The narrator talks about his former writing style as strikingly metaphysical, and introduces a flower motif that will be recurrent throughout the poem. The words lilacs and poppies are used to symbolize the happiness and prosperity of the life before war. Through the questions and motifs, he foreshadows that he will no longer write about the contentment and the beauty of nature. In the fourth line, the narrator states, "I'm going to tell you what's happening to me." This line connects to the title, and the narrator proclaims that this poem will be about him explaining the changes in his poetry. The point of view changes as the narrator goes from second-person narrative to first-person narrative, portraying the questions of the reader and his answers to the question.
I lived in a barrio of Madrid, with bells, with clocks, with trees. From there you could see the parched face of Castile like an ocean of leather. My house was called the House of Flowers, because from everywhere geraniums burst. It was a beautiful house, with dogs and children. The speaker begins to tell us about the past, reminiscing over the beauty of Spain and talking about his home. He states, "I lived," directly addressing himself, and the use of past tense portrays that it was no longer that way. The use of repetition in "with bells, with clocks, with trees" establishes visual imagery of his house and its riches. The speaker further explains the beauty of his house and states that from everywhere geraniums burst. It was a beautiful house. The use of the flower motif is used to illustrate the beauty of the house and symbolizes the happiness associated with it. The speaker also makes use of the word children, symbolizing the innocence and playful atmosphere in the house. This is later used to juxtapose with the latter half of the poem.
Raoul, do you remember? Do you remember, Raphael? Federico, do you remember? Under the ground, do you remember my house with balconies, where the June light drowned the flowers in your mouth? The narrator uses allusions and repetition to emphasize the beauty of the past and how that beauty has dissipated. The narrator also repeats, "Do you remember?" as a means of recalling the past and how it's changed. He poses these questions three times, alluding to three different influential poets in Neruda's life during that time. Raoul was an Argentinian communist poet who lived in Madrid and became close friends with Neruda. Rafael Alberti was a Spanish poet who fled Paris after the Republicans lost and moved in with Neruda. Federico Garcia Lorca was also a Spanish poet who was killed in 1936 by the nationalist militia. The poem was also written shortly after his death. The narrator makes use of a euphemism, "under the ground," to indicate the death of Federico. The narrator directly addresses the individuals by stating them as "you" and poses these questions to reminisce about the past. The speaker addresses Federico alike to how he addresses the other poets, indicating that he too should have been alive. The narrator uses a flower motif to describe his house again, with balconies where the June light drowned in flowers. The abundance of flowers represents the abundance of happiness and beauty.
Brother, brother, everything was loud voices, salt of goods, crowds of pulsating bread, marketplaces in my barrio of arugals with its statue like pale inkwells set down among the hay. Oil flowered into spoons. A deep throbbing Oil flowed into spoons. A deep throbbing of feet and hands filled the streets. Meters, liters, the hard edge of life, heaps of fish, geometry of roofs under a cold sun in which the weathervane grew tired, delirious fine ivory of potatoes, tomatoes, more tomatoes, all the way to the sea. In this stanza, the narrator starts by informally addressing the audience as his brothers and welcoming the reader into a description of his neighborhood before the war. The figurative language and descriptive diction is used to develop an ardent tone. The speaker illustrates the loud and welcoming imagery of his neighborhood. Oil flowed into spoons, it simplifies the riches, and the descriptive language such as delirious fine ivory of potatoes portray the contentment and an uplifting tone.
And one morning all was burning, and one morning bonfire sprang out of the earth, devouring humans. And from then on fire, gunpowder from then on, and from then on blood. Bandidos with planes and moors, bandidos with rings and duchesses, bandidos with black friars signing the cross, coming down from the sky to kill children. And in the streets the blood of children ran simply like children's blood. The narrator introduces the stanza with the repetition of one morning. This signifies the ordinarity of the day. He doesn't address the day the Spanish Civil War broke out with significance, but shows that it was just a normal day when it happened. This also shows the abruptness of the war. It is noticeable that there is a sudden change of tone created by diction such as burning, bonfires, gunpowder, and blood. This change in tone is due to the fact that the narrator is no longer talking about the flower and beautiful thing. He no longer addresses the beauty of his land and talks about the people now devoured by fire. The narrator also repeats the phrase "from then on" in this stanza. This signifies how from that point forward it was constant chaos. The use of an anaphora, bandidos with, further develops the alarming tone. The stanza concludes with, "And in the streets the blood of children ran simply like children's blood." This is a simile, however the narrator is comparing the children's blood to children's blood, making use of the word simply. This signifies that there is no other thing the death of the children could possibly compare to, because of how devastating it is. The children's blood can only be compared to itself.
Jackals the jackals would despise. Stones the dry thistle would bite on and spit out. Vipers the vipers would abominate. Facing you, I've seen the blood of Spain rise up, to drown you in a single wave of pride and knives. The next stanza includes a series of metaphors and allusions. When talking about jackals and vipers, the speaker is referring to Francisco Franco and the Nationalist Party. Jackals and vipers are powerful and strong animals that are somewhat perceived as evil. So the speaker is saying that even the nationalists, who Neruda views as evil, would despise themselves if they could see what they were doing. Neruda then switches and speaks directly to the war itself. The speaker uses metaphors when he says, "Facing you, I've seen the blood of Spain rise up and drown in a single wave of pride and knives," talking about how the war has allowed him to see the violence in Spain he did not think was present, and how he has seen the beautiful country of Spain drown in brutality and nationalism.
Traitors, generals, look at my dead house, look at Spain broken. From every house burning metal comes out instead of flowers. But from every crater of Spain comes pain. From every dead child comes a rifle with eyes. From every crime bullets are born. That one day will find out in you the side of the heart. Neruda addresses the generals in the war and the traitors as the generals, and he uses repetition and metaphors to directly order them to look at how the war has affected Spain and how every death, fire, and crater brought upon by the war had a mind before the action. He then uses direct address with you as he tells them that one day this devastation they have created will reach their hearts and they'll be able to feel sympathy for what had happened.
You will ask, why doesn't his poetry speak to us of dreams, of leaves, of the great volcanoes of his native land? Come see the blood in the streets. Come and see the blood in the streets. Come and see the blood in the streets. In this stanza, the speaker starts off again writing about love poems or poems about nature. The speaker then repeats the phrase, "Come and see the blood in the streets," answering the question he posed. This time he is answering the question in a much more concise manner, and he is very straight to the point. He doesn't bother talking about the beautiful country he used to live in and how it changed, but he simply states that he has not been writing poetry the way he had been before because he is no longer able to see the beauty of Spain as he once had.